Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Thank you all. Have a seat.
We were just out back with the President, and of course he told us not to be nervous at all, but of course, as you can probably imagine, that's exactly what we all are. But this is a great moment for our company today, and to welcome the President of the United States here. But before we kick off our meeting, I think everyone here should know who our guests are. To my right, or rather to the right of the President, is Steve Teese. He's the President of Spartanburg Steel. And then Brian Levicek and Fred Wilson, also from Spartanburg Steel. To my left is Lane Guest, Henry Kempel, and Barry Bell from BMW, Mr. President. And Mr. President, I think if you look behind here, you'll see a lot of beaming faces. The same thing out here. We're obviously very proud that you're here with us today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Well, Carl, thanks. Yeah, I'm delighted to be here. I appreciate so very much you all let me come by to say a few words. We're going to have a kind of a discussion about jobs. When I hear somebody in our country wants to work and can't find a job, it says to me we got a problem. We got to keep working to make sure people are able to work. So we're here to really talk about jobs. Before we do, I do want to say something, though, about this company. I understand 26 of your employees, your fellow employees, are in Iraq. I know a lot of you have got relatives who serve in the United States military. I want to thank you. I want you to tell them thank you on behalf of a grateful nation for working to see to it that this nation is secure. You got to understand that free nations are peaceful nations. The more freedom there is in the world, the more secure America becomes. We must never forget the lessons of September the 11th, 2001. And I want you to pass on to your fellow employees and loved ones, this Commander-in-Chief is grateful for the sacrifice and service. Before we get kind of this discussion going on, I want to say a couple of things. I want to thank the governor for being here. Governor Sanford's here. Senator Lindsey Graham is with us. Congressman DeMint, Brown, Wilson, and Barrett are with us as well. Speaker Wilkins. When the president shows up, you know, all kinds of people show up. But I'm glad to be in their company. They're good folks. They're friends. The other thing is that we come in a time of a pretty upbeat assessment about our economy. More than pretty upbeat. Third quarter growth was strong. Last week we saw the unemployment numbers drop. The private sector is growing. Entrepreneurship is vibrant. And about over 280,000 new jobs were created over the last 3 months, and that's positive. That's really good, particularly if you're somebody looking for work. But we're here to talk about policies to make it even better. That's what we want. We're not satisfied. And we're not satisfied because I do understand some are struggling. But with that, Carl, I want to thank you for your hospitality. I look forward to hearing from our fellow citizens about what's on your mind. And really, I'm grateful so many of you all showed up and gave me a chance to come and to say hello.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. One of the things that in preparing to meet with you today, Mr. President, we learned that you're honestly, genuinely interested in the story of BMW. After all, we are a foreign company that made a very momentous and strategic decision more than a decade ago to come to the United States to build BMWs for the world. And we have been, well, very successful. And it has really helped the company both in terms of adding additional product. In fact, the cars that we build here, the X5 and the Z4, are only built here and built for the world. We actually export about 60% of what we build here. By the end of this calendar year, we will have built about 700,000 BMWs here at Plant Spartanburg. We have had a wonderful growth curve, if you will, in our business. Our first full year of production was way back in '96. We built about 50,000 cars. This year we'll do about 160,000 cars. But I know obviously interest for us and certainly for you is the issue of job creation. One of the most important decisions we made started back then also. We had about 20 suppliers in the U.S. at that time. Today we have about 138. There are 39 here just in South Carolina alone, and 31 of those, this is their first North American operations when they came to the United States. All of them are successful. We've created about 4,700 jobs just here at our plant, but we know, based on a study that the University of South Carolina did for us, that we can claim about 17,000 jobs here in South Carolina directly connected to working and supplying this plant. So I think from that perspective, there has been a tremendous economic impact in terms of BMW coming here. You should also know that we represent about 17% of worldwide production for BMW, and about 20% of all BMWs sold in the U.S. come right out of this plant. The decision to come here was a very important turning point in the history of our company, because in the late 80s we started running into problems here and made a really long-term commitment to turn our business around. And so coming here to South Carolina, setting up this plant has been a great success story for our company.
Well, I appreciate it. First of all, it says to me that our workers are the best in the world. And people are really productive. You know, you hear this a lot of talk about trade. You're living the trade world. And if we do a good job about making sure trade is free and fair, people are going to find work here in America. That's what this is all about. In other words, we welcome people coming here. We welcome their money. I know the workers welcome the chance to work, and we're good about it. We're good at workers, and that's what this plant shows. And so I appreciate very much, most importantly, I appreciate the deployment of capital from overseas to America, but most importantly, I appreciate the hard-working Americans who make it an attractive place for people to invest right here in South Carolina. We're the most productive workforce in the world right now, by far. I mean, our productivity per worker is way out of sight. And we just got to keep it that way, because you see high productivity, it creates a short-term problem on employment. If one worker can put out more goods, unless the economy grows, it's going to be hard to hire new people. But in the long run, high productivity means better pay, better living. And so what you just told me is this workforce is doing its job. And there's no doubt in my mind this workforce can compete with anybody in the world. And my job is to make sure that we have a level playing field. See, that we got fair trade, free and fair trade. We want free trade because we want you to be able to sell what you make here out of the state of South Carolina overseas. That's what we want. Because if you're not selling those cars overseas, then some of you may not be working. And we want you working. But I appreciate that, Carl. Thanks.
Steve, I wonder if you might want to tell the President a little bit about your company.
Sure, Carl. Mr. President, Spartanburg Steel and Spartanburg Stainless are two privately held manufacturing companies here. We call ourselves SSP. It's a little easier to say than the full name. Spartanburg Steel began production here in 1962, so it's an old company. But we make metal stampings today. We make metal stampings and welded assemblies for BMW, principally for the X5 sport activity vehicle, which is produced here at the plant. You can see some of our parts are surrounding us here today. You see some metal parts around the room, around the stage. A number of these assemblies are made at our company. Spartanburg Steel has grown nicely because of its relationship with BMW. That growth is helping our owners, our associates, and our suppliers as well. Now, we have a second company here in Spartanburg as well. It's called Spartanburg Stainless Products, also SSP. Okay? And Spartanburg Stainless makes metal stampings and assemblies, but we also make beer kegs. We're the only American beer keg manufacturer in North America.
I quit drinking in '86,
We noticed.
but I bet some of the people out here use the product. I'm not going to point out which ones.
Well, we did notice a dip in demand at a point in time. But probably no relationship.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We,
Pretty observant fella, aren't you?
we manufacture beer kegs for all American brewers, and in fact, one of our current projects is for the oldest brewery in America that we're building kegs for, a company called Yuengling in Pottsville, Pennsylvania. It's the oldest American brewery that we're building a large order for right now. But enough about kegs. Let me talk a little bit about our associates. At our two SSP companies, we have over 900 employees today employed in our two companies. And that's up nearly 300 jobs over the last 4 years. We owe an awful lot of that growth to BMW and our other fine customers. I have a couple of our associates with us here today as well to give you their stories. Let me move off of that, though, and move towards investment a little bit. Over the past 4 years, we've invested roughly $35 million in facility and equipment expansions for Spartanburg. These expansions are helping us grow into new customers, specifically one for John Deere. We made a large expansion recently for John Deere's lawn tractor company, which is located in another Greenville, Tennessee, which is on the eastern side of the state of Tennessee. Finally, in terms of plans, we're looking at another approximately $20 million investment in the year 2004, 2005, but I think I'm going to be challenged to try and get it done before the end of 2004 because your new accelerated depreciation program that kicks in the high gear, actually kicked in the high gear in May of this year, provides a good, fast, rapid acceleration of our depreciation expense, which will allow us to save money on that investment. And that'll help create more jobs for our companies here at Spartanburg.
Yeah. Let me amplify on that real quick. Sorry to interrupt. Tax policy, good tax policy is important for economic growth. And if you... And I just want to make sure everybody understands what he's talking about there. First of all, I hope you saw the tax relief. If you're a mom or a dad, you did, because we increased the child credit. We reduced rates. I'm going to tell you why, just so that you understand the logic. If you have more money in your pocket, you're going to demand an additional good or a service. And when you demand an additional good or a service, somebody is going to produce the good or a service. And when somebody produces it, it means somebody is more likely to first keep a job. And if there's enough demand out there, it means the job base will expand. What he's talking about was incentives we provided to encourage businesses to invest. And when a business invests, it's say a piece of equipment, somebody has to make the equipment. That in itself encourages economic vitality and growth. The tax relief we passed came at the right time. What we now need to do is make it permanent. Interestingly enough, because of a quirk in the rules in the United States Senate, the tax relief we passed begins to go away in '05. In order to make sure that people can plan for capital investment and you can plan your lives, the Congress needs to make the tax relief permanent.
Well, we're a small company, maybe a mid-sized company on the outside, and the tax relief that we're going to achieve through this the rapid depreciation is worth $3 to $4 million to us, and that's a big deal to Spartanburg Steel.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about our company, Mr. President.
Good. Well, I presume your company wouldn't be doing well if it hadn't been for somebody willing to invest here in South Carolina in the BMW plant. What people have got to understand is that when BMW builds cars, there's a spin-off effect. Businesses in the area benefit as well. The more work you all do at BMW, the more likely somebody's going to be doing work in an associated supplier. Economic vitality depends upon the money circulating in our economy. And not only does tax policy help, but good trade policy helps. Being willing to welcome foreign investment into the state of South Carolina. What I'm more interested in is, are you working? I don't really care who owns the plant. What I want to know is, are they paying you when they say they're going to pay you? Is your jobs, is your check showing up?
Yes, of course. Next to me is Brian, and Brian's our maintenance supervisor for us. He's been with us just a few months, and he'll tell his story. And next to him is Fred. Fred's a quality manager for our company, and he's been with us about a year. Both of these are relatively new employees, Mr. President.
What's your story, Brian? Tell me.
Yes, Mr. President. This time last year, I was working for a company in Columbia, South Carolina that announced that we were bought out by the competitor, and they were closing the facility in Columbia, South Carolina. So I went out and started looking for a job for quite a while. Didn't have a whole lot of success. Fortunately, 2 weeks before the plant shut down, Spartanburg Steel opened a position for a maintenance supervisor. That was what I was previously doing in my company. Thankfully, I took it, not only because I was going to lose my job, but two, I also got a chance to join a company that's very stable and has great potential due to BMW, John Deere. All this was very exciting for me, and the transition from having one point losing my job, possibly losing my house, to now I have a new career. I have a new house in Spartanburg, as well as selling my house in Columbia as I speak right now. So this has been a very positive thing for me. Spartanburg is very committed to being the leader in suppliers for BMW. They got a maintenance excellence program that is absolutely incredible. In the short time I've been here, in 3 months, I've been active, as exposed to it, and also part of the training in 3 months of putting this program together. So I'm very excited and absolutely willing to take the challenge.
Well, I appreciate that. I want to congratulate you for having the drive and the desire to go find a job.
Thank you, Mr. President.
And I'm glad there was one available for you.
Mr. President,
Are you the keg man?
No, I'm not the keg man. No, I'm a native of upstate South Carolina. I've been able to work in the manufacturing sector in the upstate nearly all of my working career. Up until about a year ago, the company I was with had gone through repeated downsizings, and I found for the first time since my college days I was out looking for a job. It was a pretty scary time for me. I began my job search both locally and nationally. I found that in this area there were jobs available in the manufacturing sector. A large percentage of them are automotive related, and many of those are Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 suppliers to BMW. But about the same time, we had our first grandchild, and so now the pressure is on not only to get a job, but to get a job in this area. So I was very fortunate when I saw that Spartanburg Steel had a position open, went up, interviewed with them, and as Brian said, I saw a company that had very close ties, very good ties with BMW. They had a strong customer base, a lot of growth opportunity, and a tremendous management team. So for me, it's been just a really very rewarding experience.
Yeah, I appreciate that. These stories are stories of an economy that's changing. We've been through a tough time. I mean, no doubt about it. We've been through a recession. The enemy hit us on September the 11th. It affected not only our psychology, but it affected the economy. It just did. It's just a reality. Unfortunately, we had some corporate citizens who didn't tell the truth. They forgot what it means to be a responsible citizen. They kind of fudged the numbers. They're going to be held to account, by the way. That's what we need. That's how you need to treat people who... We marched to war. I don't know if you remember on your TV screens last summer. A year ago, summer, it said "March to War." You turn on the TV and there it says "March to War." That's not a very conducive environment in which people are willing to take risks. It's not a positive thought. It's a necessary, in my judgment, obviously, to make America secure, but it's not positive. I know it's not. So we've overcome a lot. Plus, the economy is restructuring. And so the fundamental question is, what do you do about it? One, you encourage growth, the creation of new jobs. Most new jobs in America are created by small businesses, and so we had a small business focus. But the other thing we got to understand is that as the society becomes more productive and the nature of the jobs change, we got to make sure there's worker training programs. We got over 1,700 one-stop sites for workers to go to. These guys did their own one-stop shopping, but not everybody may have the same ability to do that. And you can get on a computer and find out the jobs available in your neighborhood, and as importantly, the job training programs available. I mean, somebody listening out there today who is wondering whether or not they can find a work, there are ample opportunities to find job training programs that will help train you for jobs which actually exist. And that's a very important concept. It's a little bit of a change. It used to be that government would judge you on just did you have job training programs. And therefore, we have 1,000 hairdressers for 50 jobs, which didn't make sense. What you're trying to do now is match demand for jobs with the people. There's a lot of Pell Grant money available, and that's important for people to know so they can go to a community college. And then there's monies available for community colleges, and I know the governor's working on this to make sure the community colleges become laboratories for educating workforce for the jobs which exist. There are jobs available. And so the fundamental question is, how do we help people find those jobs? And one thing we've got to do is focus on, technology roars through the economy and society, and labor's left behind. And so we've got to make sure labor stays caught up. As society changes, as the economy changes, we've got to have programs that actually make sense, and programs that focus the job training programs on making sure that the workforce, the most productive in the world, has got the skills necessary to meet the jobs of the future. I want to thank you two guys for taking the initiative. We can have every job training program in the world sit out there, but it also requires people willing to take the initiative and be responsible citizens. I appreciate the example you set. I'm glad BMW is vibrant and doing well. I'm glad you're selling products overseas as well as here at home. So Spartanburg has had the opportunity to hire these two guys. And this is a success story, and I want to thank you very much for being a part of it. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I know certainly my fellow BMW associates would like to share some of their stories about joining BMW with you. To my left lane, are you ready to rock and roll? Okay, here we go.
Well, Mr. President, before I came to BMW, I was working for a company called Mettler Toledo Scales, and there we made weighing scales for the post office, the grocery stores, and when the trucks are on 85, where they'll pull off and weigh, we made those scales too, and my job was to make the load cell that goes into the weighing scale. I came to BMW in March of 1995. During that time, after maybe 2 years, I was a part of the new model team for the X5, and I did get to travel to Germany to work on the X5, layering out the wire harness. And on the weekend, we had the opportunity to visit different countries: Berlin, Venice, Italy, Czech Republic, some of the places that you read about but never thought you would get to visit. When I came back, after all that was done, I came back, I trained some of the new associates on how to lay out the wiring harness. Once I finished that, if they were new associates and went to night shift, I went to night shift with them for 2 weeks to make sure that they were doing their jobs right. Then I came back to A shift and started all over again.
Woo! Yeah. Good job. You remember I talked about job training? A good company is one that works hard to train the workforce. A good company is a company which says, how do we keep our workers on the front edge of change? It sounds like BMW does that, and I appreciate you then passing on the skills you learned. A good company also provides good health care, good retirement, and obviously the added benefit of letting people travel to see a different part of the world, which is a pretty interesting concept when you think about it. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your story with us.
You're welcome.
Henry?
Henry.
Mr. President, I guess I got a two-part story and didn't really realize it until after you started talking. I came here from after 17 years in textiles, and I started my first day here was the first day that, the day of the first car they were ever built.
Really?
First BMW in South Carolina. I've done orientation for a week. I went to Greenville Tech to learn welding for a week, worked on the floor a week, and I went to Germany, like Laney. While there, I learned how to build BMWs from German auto workers. We toured the city. We went into Austria. We seen some of the castles. We learned about the Glockenspiel and Lederhosen
And beer.
and German beer. And let me tell you, if y'all think things are big in Texas, you ought to see the beer in Germany. Anyway, we continued to learn to build cars. We come back, brought more associates in, trained them how to build German-engineered cars in the United States. Continued to improve my skills, learning brazing, welding, grinding, metal repair, body fit, and waited on our very first new model here, the Z3. Worked on that. Went to assembly, learned how to build the inside of the car, and got the opportunity to start on the very first SAV BMW ever made here, and made in South Carolina. Looking forward to more new models. But the second part of the story is a year after I was here, the textile plant I was in had shut down. I had talked to my wife and I said, honey, you need to get out of retail and get into manufacturing. The hours are a lot better, so she did. She had been there long enough so that she got to take advantage of the Displaced American Textile Act. And it paid for her a 2-year degree. She went to Tech and learned engineering, and now she has a job with the Lawrence Electric Co-op doing the drafting for them. So even through textile shutting down, the government programs are working. BMW is investing and giving us chances that we'd never had.
Well, I appreciate that story. Look, I know there's a lot of textile workers here in this state who are worried about their future. Some have lost their job, and obviously we care about that a lot. And the government will do everything we can to make sure that the rules are fair. But Henry's story is an interesting story, and the wife's story is an interesting story about somebody who said, wait a minute, there's a better job. And it does take, and it's hard to leave work. I understand that. It's unsettling. But you just got to know, and I want to emphasize again what Henry said, there are programs to help people transition from one kind of job to a job which has got more security and a better paying job, and a better paying job. And that's what's happening in the workforce. The jobs are better paying. There's health care jobs, or jobs in the manufacturing sector. And a productive workforce means that people are going to be able to make more money over the long term. That's what that means. And we just got to make sure that we help people get there. And part of the reasons I've come to talk with people who have been through this before is I want people who are listening to know that there is hope, that they're going to have a little drive, but there's plenty of help for people who are trying to transition from an industry that may not be on firm footing to other jobs that are lasting, that'll be long-lasting jobs. It's important for people here in South Carolina to know that, and I want to thank you, Henry, for sharing her story, and tell your wife, congratulations on being somebody. Where is she? Yeah, I'll tell her. I'll tell her myself. Thank you for doing what you did. It's a great example to set, and congratulations.
Barry, would you like to share your...
Yeah, Barry, before you begin, tell him what you told me about Texas. Remember you were going to...
Well, actually, I was supposed to be going to Texas this week for a hunting trip, but I've sort of backed out of that, and I'm here with you now. So.
That's right, yeah. I knew he's my kind of guy when he said he wanted to go on a hunting trip. I don't know if I'd have canceled if I'd have been him, but thank you.
Well, I did. Mr. President, to give you my story, back in 1994, I was working in a local manufacturing company here, and working a lot of odd hours, a lot of long hours, and basically what it boiled down to, I missed my son's first baseball game, and you can't get that back once it's gone. I was working a lot of long hours, like about 80 hours a week, 7 days a week, and you can't get that back. And basically, BMW at that time was hiring, and I had submitted my application to them, and they called me. They gave me an opportunity to come to work here. Scared to death. I was absolutely scared to death to come to work out here. I didn't know anything about building a vehicle, but right from the onset, me walking in the door of this place, BMW invested in me by starting training. They started training me from day one, and to this day, that's almost 10 years ago, they're still training me today. They're still giving me training. Just a couple of years ago, they sent me to Singapore for some training, which was great. I got to travel. I got to see part of the country. You know, I never would be able to see it again the rest of my life. And while I was there, I got to meet BMW representatives from China, Thailand, Japan, Malaysia. So BMW really invested in me by teaching me and training me. I've seen cars built now from out of the body shop where it just comes from single parts, and I've watched them be built all the way to where there's a final product coming off our assembly line. And I never thought a person like me would ever be able to do something like that, but I wouldn't if they hadn't invested in the training that they give me.
Well, I appreciate the story. Let me pick up on one thing. Again, obviously, it's a good company, which is one that keeps their people on the cutting edge of change by having training. I also want to pick up on what he just said. It's a little off the subject, but a responsible citizen is somebody who loves their child with all their heart. A citizen who says, I want to put my family, is a citizen I'd love to have working for me. A citizen says, I want my family first. I weep when I think about the thought of missing my child's baseball game. Is the kind of guy I want working for me, the kind of guy I want working with me. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mr. President, listening to you, some of your comments have made me realize how critically you take the issue of the importance of government and private industry working together for the betterment of the future. And I thought I should share with you with one thing. This Wednesday morning, Clemson University will be breaking ground for a new graduate engineering center, and that is a direct result of a collaborative effort. BMW, our state legislature, the governor's office, Department of Commerce, and of course Clemson. We think it's going to be unique. We think it even has a chance to be one of the best graduate engineering schools in the world, not just here in the United States. So we are thinking always about how to sustain excellence.
Well, I appreciate that. You know, it's like I was in North Carolina the other day, and the hospital people are looking for work, so they went to this junior college, a community college, and helped the people design a curriculum that would then enable people to come out of the course with the skills necessary to be hired. And that's what we got to do. We got to make sure that we tailor curriculum for the jobs which will exist. Because there's a lot of fine people in our country, hardworking, decent, honorable people, that all they want is a chance. And when the economy races by them, all they're asking for is give me some skills so I can go out and be a productive employee. And sometimes you find it inside your company. Sometimes it requires a community college to have the program necessary. All the time it requires a citizen initiative. That's what it requires. You did mention government. Just remember, the role of the government is to see to it that this economy gets going by having good policy. Right. Tax policy is good policy. Healthcare policy for small businesses is important. We got one other thing. Education policy is important, obviously. There's one other thing I want to mention right quick, because it's now up in Congress. Manufacturing companies need energy. Like, you're not going to be working long if you don't have energy to run this plant. It's a practical matter. And we got an energy bill that we're trying to get out, an energy bill which says we'll work on conservation, an energy bill that says our electricity system needs to be modern. You may remember what happened last summer. I mean, there was a pretty clear signal that parts of the electricity grid need to be modernized. They're old and ancient and tired. The utilities, we're working on voluntary reliability standards. I think they ought to be mandatory reliability standards. That means if you're responsible for moving electricity, it must be mandatory that you've got reliability in your system. So we got an energy bill up there. Let me just make this very clear to you. We can find energy at home, and we need to do that. We can do it in environmentally friendly ways by using technology. We need to have clean coal technology. We need to be finding natural gas in our own hemisphere for the sake of your economic security and your job security, and for the sake of national security. This country must become less dependent on foreign sources of energy. Listen, I'm honored you all came out to say hello. I appreciate you giving me a chance to, Carl and you all, to come and talk about jobs and what's happening in the economy and how we can continue to create an environment for job creation. I'm excited about the future because I know the nature of America. We've overcome a lot in this country. We really have. But I'm not surprised because I know the nature of the citizens who live in this country. People who are tough when they need to be tough and compassionate when they need to be compassionate. People who work hard. As I said, and I meant it, the best workforce in the world is right here in America, right here in front of me. There's going to be other challenges in front of America, but there's no doubt in my mind we will meet every challenge because of the nature of this country. This country is freedom's home. This country is freedom's defender. And this country believes the American dream ought to be available to everybody. And we need to create that environment so people can realize that dream. I am so proud to be with you all. I want to thank you for your hospitality. May God bless you and your families, and may God continue to bless our great country. Thank you very much.